What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so this is the situation we have right here. This is Tropical Depression Celia. This video is going to be talking about basically what's going to be happening in the next few days, because we've now have several hurricane models that now have this thing intensifying into a hurricane, perhaps even stronger than that. But before we do, we need to talk about what's going on now. It still has winds at 30 miles per hour. The NHC still has us going up to a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm by the time it reaches 1 a.m. on Friday. We'll have to take a look at that because there are many models that have this thing potentially going stronger than that, and basically what we're going to be covering today. So right now it's moving west at 7 miles per hour. It's the minimum central pressure is still at 1,006 I think it's 1,006 or 1,008 millibars. It's expected to stay a depression until Tuesday and then strengthen to a storm, and then it's expected to gradually strengthen into a strong tropical storm. But there are many models that think it's actually going to strengthen faster and become more intense than this. But before we get to these models, we need to take a look at the intensity and track models. The track models, there are several models having this thing pointed more towards the Baja California over here, which that's an interesting thing to take a look at, and there might be some potential risk for southern Baja California as time goes on, but we'll have to pay attention to that as, like I said, as time goes on. So it's an area of interest we need to keep an eye out for. So I'll be continuing to keep an eye out on it for you guys. So this is the intensity models. The HWFI now has this at a Category 2. We have 3 Cat 2 models that have this going all the way up to a Category 2 strength. And we have others like the H-Wharf, potentially the H-Mom, GFS, those models that have this thing strengthening up to potentially that strength as well. And now we have even more models having this thing strengthened to a hurricane at least. The models are now kind of. It looks like the majority of models now agree that this thing's going to be a hurricane, and while the rest of the models have this as like a strong tropical storm, as you can see right here. Even a couple have it going up to like 60 miles per hour and then stopping. So that's an area of interest we'll have to keep an eye on. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into the models. This is the H-Mon right here, and this is the H-Mon. Because the 6Z isn't ready yet, we're gonna base it off the 0Z runs right here, and we're gonna keep this going. And as you can see, it kind of meanders there for the next couple of days, and then it starts to strengthen a little bit. Like, yeah, it's kind of for the next 60 hours. It kind of like stays as a depression. Then that's when it starts intensifying as a storm after about 60 hours, and then it continues to develop, and then it potentially strengthens into a hurricane right here, and then it potentially develops. And the lowest pressure the H1 actually goes down to is about 970 millibars, and that actually 969. And that's 5.5 days out, which that's an interesting thing you need to take a look at. Like, this is the H1. This is generally the more moderate, one of the more moderate models right here that I've kept an eye on, and we're looking at a pressure of 969 millibars and potential winds at 850 millibars, getting close to 125 knots. So that's something interesting to take a look at. This looks like. By the looks of it, this looks like it's going to be, if the H-Mon is the correct model, this is going to be a Category 2 hurricane. Now we're actually going to go ahead and go to the CMC just to show you what's going on. Let's go ahead and roll that back to Celia. And this is what we have. Even the CMC, which didn't even expect Blast to become a hurricane, now has Celia as a hurricane, although its models are more all over the place. Like, the low pressure kind of just apparently makes landfall in Guatemala, which must be a glitch on their part, but that's not going to happen. And it's kind of meanders there, similar to the H-Mon, but a little bit longer. And then it starts to its development phase, strengthens to a tropical storm, then into a hurricane about 5 days out, and then that's when it really gets interesting right here. The lowest pressure it actually gets down to is around 980 millibars is and if we take a look at the winds, it looks like it's going to be at a high-end category, potentially a high-end Category 1 hurricane, according to the CMC. And this is a model that didn't even expect Blast to become a hurricane, so we need to pay close attention to this. And then this thing weakens as it actually we see tropical storm force winds impacting potentially Baja California over here. So that's a situation we need to keep a lookout. Like, even if this thing doesn't make direct landfall, the Baja Peninsula could potentially see some damaging winds and potentially a little bit of storm surge actually as well. And then this thing kind of weakens and kind of dissipates out there. So that's the CMC. This is the one of the weaker models. The GFS will have to, the GFS is actually okay. I don't understand what's going on. Let's go ahead and yeah, we'll have to use a different metric from this. So yeah, we're using the 0Z with this as well. And this is a similar situation to the rest. It kind of actually is takes a little bit. It's a little quicker in its development right here. And then, it's not quicker actually. It just kind of strengthens about 90 hours out, and then it strengthens to a tropical storm, into a hurricane, and then it actually goes down to 974 millibars. Like, it's actually, the HMON's actually higher than the GFS, which is actually quite surprising if you take a look at it. And the GFS doesn't really impact the Baja Peninsula as much as the CMC expects it to. And then it kind of meanders and just weakens as time goes on. But 974, this is potentially a Category 2 hurricane right here, if the GFS is the correct model. But the most aggressive model out of all of these, as usual, is the H-Wharf. Now, I must give you a bit of caution. The H-Wharf is basically your worst case scenario situation right here. So the H-Wharf is basically like, it's not the absolute peak it could go, but the H-Wharf is generally a very aggressive model. So I want everyone to understand it as time goes on. But if you take a look at this, it doesn't really develop for the next 2 days, and then it starts to intensify as time goes on. And then it becomes a hurricane, and then the pressure continues dropping. It continues to fall. It falls down to 961 millibars. That's the peak right here. 961. That's either a high-end Category 2 or a low-end Category 3. It's literally knocking out it's literally around 110 to 100, generally 110 to 120 miles per hour right here. And if we're looking at these winds right here, we're seeing potential of potentially 130 knots at 850 millibars. That's interesting right there. We could be, like, if the H-Wharf is correct, and once again, this is a very aggressive model, that we could be potentially seeing a low-end Cat 3 from this, which that is an interesting take on this, but at this point, only time will tell what will happen. As Celia is still a tropical depression, we have a lot of time before anything happens. We have about 2.5 days before it starts to develop and intensify. But with that being said, it's going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps me out and helps me make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather, which is what I hope I am doing with this. But with that being said, guys, have a wonderful day and stay safe.